Volvo wheel loaders are well known for their operating reliability, service friendliness and their high quality. But a good tool is only one of the conditions required to do a good job. Another is operator skill, both when it comes to running the machine and for correct maintenance. These factors are important for the availability of the machine, its operating life and productivity. This instruction video is about both operating and maintaining your machine, in this case the Volvo L70 to the L330D. The machine shown in the video may have equipment and instruments that your particular machine may not be equipped with. The video is a complement to the operator's manual. We'll give you the basic knowledge, but for each stage shown in the video, there's more in the operator's manual. So read the operator's manual carefully and think too about how you can avoid risks before putting your machine to work. Wear a hard hat when you're outside the operator's cab. Always face the machine and use the 3-point contact when using the in-step ladder. Wear safety glasses when there's a risk of sparks or spray. Do not wear a watch, rings, necklace or similar items that may get caught in moving parts during service work. Stand and walk only on anti-slip surfaces. Wear suitable clothes and personal protective equipment. Also make sure that the cab is kept clean and free from objects that may end up under the pedals. Use the seat belt for all operations of your machine. The video is divided into 3 parts. Part 1 is about instruments and controls in the cab. Part 2, procedures before starting and daily maintenance. Here we give you the basic skills for operating your machine. We demonstrate operation in applications well suited to your machine, such as bucket handling of loose materials, rock handling, timber handling, grading, pallet forks, material handling arm, and snow handling. At the end of Part 2, we'll go through procedures after operating. In Part 3, we'll show you how to maintain your machine according to the maintenance section in the operator's manual. Let's begin by looking at the operator's environment. Use all adjustment possibilities on the operator's seat. Find a comfortable position that suits your needs. See further details in the operator's manual. The adjustable steering wheel has many setting possibilities. Move the lever downward to adjust the steering wheel backwards and forwards to the desired position. Move the lever upward to adjust the height of the steering wheel. Avoid adjusting it too high. The control lever carrier and the armrest are also adjustable to give a comfortable operating position. If your machine is equipped with lever steering, CDC, you can easily lower the armrest and adjust it. CDC steering is activated by this button. The gear selector control on the steering wheel and at the CDC console should be in neutral. Here's the switch for forward, neutral, reverse, the kickdown button and the steering lever itself. The CDC steering is intended for short operating cycles only and must not be used when operating on a road. When operating with CDC, the steering wheel remains stationary, but the steering function is never disengaged. At any time, the operator can switch to steering with the steering wheel. The system is also deactivated if you use the ordinary gear selector control and when you raise the armrest. The instruments in the cab are distributed on 4 panels. Front left instrument panel, center instrument panel, front right instrument panel, and the right instrument panel. Here's the electrically operated parking brake. Always apply the parking brake when you've stopped the machine. If you forget to apply the parking brake, it'll be applied automatically when the engine is turned off. When you restart the engine, you must first apply the parking brake and then release it to be able to move the machine. If your machine is equipped with a hydraulic attachment bracket, you should use the two left switches when changing attachments. We'll describe how this is done in the section on operating instructions. Next to them is the switch for the hazard flashes. On the center instrument panel, from the left, control lights, the display unit in the center, and to the right, gauges for transmission oil temperature, coolant temperature, and fuel level. On the information display unit, it's possible to access a lot of valuable data about your machine. The information is divided into different levels. Here's an example of operating information showing engine speed, engaged gear, the time, and current speed. There's also other important information, for example when the engine filter is clogged and when it's time for service. Another level of information is different kinds of warnings. You'll also be given information if there's anything wrong in the monitoring system. There are many other functions too. These you can read about in the operator's manual. The keyboard for the display unit is on the front instrument panel. With the keyboard, you can select and browse through the different function groups. You can activate and deactivate functions, set up language and units, and a lot more that you can read about in the operator's manual. To the left of the display unit are the control lights. When you turn the ignition key to the operating position or start the engine, a test program which checks the system is run for 4 to 5 seconds. All control lights should light up at the start of the program. Any malfunction in the system is shown on the display unit. At the same time, the 3 gauges on the instrument panel perform a test indication. Many of the lights are red warning lights, which together with the 2 special warning lights, the red central warning light and the amber one, have a special function in 3 stages. We'll show you an example if the axle oil temperature becomes too high. First, the information light flashes in amber. At the same time, a text comes up on the display unit and the warning lamp for the function lights up. If the temperature still increases, the red central warning light starts to flash. The warning light for the function is still on. The display unit shows warning, high axle oil temperature. When a gear is engaged, a buzzer will sound. The charging control light for the batteries should be off when operating. If the control light comes on, there's a malfunction. Find the cause of the problem, otherwise the batteries may be damaged. This light warns if the engine lubricating oil pressure is too low. If the light comes on and the red central warning light flashes, stop the engine immediately and have the problem investigated and repaired. If this control light comes on, it's a warning that the oil pressure in the transmission is too low. Do not operate the machine, but troubleshoot for the cause and repair. When the brake pressure is too low or if a brake circuit is out of order, the warning light will be on. The machine must not be operated until the malfunction has been located and repaired. The amber control light is lit when the work lights are switched on. This warning light indicates that the parking brake is applied. If you try to operate the machine, the buzzer will sound. If the oil level in the hydraulic oil tank is too low, this warning light will light up. Stop the machine and investigate the cause. If the temperature in the axles is too high, this warning light lights up. If the temperature rises still further, the central warning lamp lights up and the buzzer sounds. Operate the machine using the brakes as little as possible. After a while, the axles will cool down to normal working temperature. If the machine has secondary steering, the red control light will indicate if there's a malfunction in the primary steering system. The amber control light indicates that the secondary steering pump is engaged. In exceptional cases, the light may come on during sudden steering movements at low engine speeds, even though there is no malfunction in the system. Empty the bucket and operate the machine only for a short distance and at low speed, driving to a place where it can be stopped safely or to a workshop to have the malfunction diagnosed and repaired. When high beams are used, the blue control light is on. The direction indicator control light indicates right and left indicators respectively. The control light indicates when the rotating beacon is activated. Control light for preheating. The light will be on when preheating is engaged. Control light for the differential lock. This light will be on when the differential lock is engaged. This control light remains on for as long as the boom suspension system is activated. This light indicates when the CDC and the forward-reverse functions are activated. There are 3 gauges on the right part of the instrument panel. At the top, the temperature gauge for the engine coolant. If the pointer enters the red area, the red warning light beside the gauge lights up. The central warning light comes on and the display unit will show a warning. When a gear is engaged, the buzzer will sound. Run the engine at low idle for a few minutes. If the gauge remains in the red area, stop the engine and investigate the cause for overheating. Down to the left is the temperature gauge for the transmission oil. If the pointer enters the red area, the red warning light beside the gauge lights up. The central warning light comes on and the display unit shows a warning. When the gear is engaged, the buzzer will sound. Stop the machine and investigate the cause for overheating. The fuel gauge is located on the right. When the fuel level has dropped into the red marking, the warning light comes on. When this happens, the fuel tank is approximately 25% full. The right front instrument panel is located below and slightly to the side of the center instrument panel. From the left, there's the preheating switch. The preheating coil will be engaged if you turn the ignition key to the operating position and press the preheating switch. Next to it, the switch for transmission disengagement. When the switch is on, the transmission will be disengaged while braking. When the switch is off, the transmission remains engaged while braking, which is the recommended way of operating. This makes the movements of the machine smoother for all operations. Here are the switch and the greasing interval selector for the automatic lubricating system. The ignition switch has 4 different positions: off, stop, radio position, operating position, preheating, and start. Next to the ignition switch is the mode selector for APS2. We'll deal with how to use the different gear shifting programs or modes in the section on operating. The right instrument panel is to the side of the operator's seat. We'll deal with the functions of the switches as we go through this program. To the right of the switches is the socket for the service display and the mattress diagnostics program. Next to it, the cigarette lighter, the rheostat for instrument lighting, and the hour recorder. If your machine is equipped with secondary steering, you can test the function of the system. Make sure that no one is near the machine when performing the test. Turn the ignition key to the operating position and press this switch. The control light comes on and the secondary steering pump cuts in. Steer only for a few seconds. This is enough to check the function. If there's a loss of primary steering, the secondary steering cuts in automatically. Brake and stop the machine, then have the malfunction repaired. The machine must be operated only a short distance with secondary steering engaged. The climate control system with its controls and switches is located to the right of the control lever carrier. The fan control has 4 different positions. With the recirculation control, you may select outside air only or recirculation of most of the cab air. The cab temperature is steplessly adjustable. Move the control back for warm, forward for cool. If the machine is equipped with air conditioning, the switch is on the instrument panel. You get best air conditioning with windows and doors closed. A slight pressure is created in the cab, keeping dust out. For maximum cooling of the cab air, do as follows. Keep the door and windows closed and all air vents fully open. Set heater control to cold. Full recirculation and fan in position 4. Turn on the switch for air conditioning. When the temperature in the cab is comfortable, reduce fan speed. A suitable position for the fan is at 2 and adjust the temperature with the heater control. If you want the windows demisted or the cab dehumidified quickly, proceed in the same way, except set the heater control to warm. Switch with 2 positions for machine lights. Position 1, parking lights. Position 2, running lights. The headlight dipper switch is used to change between high and low beams. With this switch in position 1, the front working lights will be on. If your machine has extra front working lights, they'll be on when the switch is in position 2. The positions on the switch for the rear working lights are the same. To avoid operating on a public road with the work lights on, there's an amber control light on the instrument panel. If your machine is equipped with a rotating beacon, you'll find the switch here. The multi-function control to the right of the steering wheel is for several things. Headlight dipper switch for high and low beams. Windshield wiper with interval and windshield washer. The rear window wiper is controlled with this switch. And here's the switch for the rear window washer. The direction indicator and the horn are also operated with the multi-function switch. We'll come back to how the gear selector control functions in the section on operating. To the right of the steering wheel we have the control lever carrier for the working hydraulics. On the far right, the lift lever, and then the tilt lever. Then a lever for machines equipped with a third hydraulic function. It's also possible to add a lever for machines equipped with a fourth function. The lift lever has 3 positions with 5 functions: lower, neutral, and lift, as well as lift with boom kick-out and a float position. The boom kick-out has 2 functions: detent function and the switch for boom kick-out position 1. Place the lever in the detent position. The lift arms automatically rise to the top position. Set the switch for boom kick-out to position 2. Again, place the lever in the detent position. The lift arms automatically rise to the predetermined position. The lever returns to the neutral position. Engage the float position with this switch. Place the lift lever in the forward detent position. The bucket lowers to the floating position. The tilt lever has 3 positions with 4 functions: tilting rearward, neutral, tilting forward, and tilting rearward with bucket positioner. Activate the switch for bucket positioner. The tilting lever will now remain in the rearward detent position until the bucket stops in a predetermined position. We'll show you how to adjust the bucket positioner and boom kick-out in the section on operating. If the machine is equipped with a single lever control for the lift arm system, you move the lever rearward for lifting, forward for lowering. Move the lever to the right for forward tilt, and to the left for rearward tilt. The elongated button is the forward reverse switch, and the small round button is for neutral position. The kickdown button is located on the front of the lever. With this control, you can lock the control levers in the neutral position. Press this button when you want to activate the boom suspension system. The control light on the instrument panel will come on when the system is activated. If you're operating with an attachment equipped with third and fourth hydraulic function and maximum precision is required, do not use the function. Here is the selector switch for the boom suspension system. With this switch, you can choose between gear-dependent or speed-dependent engagement of the boom suspension system. With the upper end pressed in and the function activated with the button on the control lever carrier, the system will be engaged when operating in second, third, and fourth gear. The control light on the front panel will be lit with a fixed green light. When downshifting with kickdown, the system is disengaged. With the lower end pressed in and the system activated with the button on the control lever carrier, the boom suspension system is engaged when a certain speed is exceeded. The control lamp on the panel will be lit. The system will be disengaged when traveling speed drops below a certain speed, which will be indicated on the display unit. It's also possible to select kickdown from the control lever carrier. When operating downhill, press this switch and an immediate downshift will take place. We'll show you how to do this in the operating section. Also, forward reverse can be selected on the control lever carrier. Read more about this function in the operator's manual. On the cab floor you'll find the throttle and brake pedals. Normally the machine has the brake to the left of the steering column. In this case, the machine is equipped with 2 brake pedals, which is a legal requirement in all EU countries. In difficult operating conditions, use the differential lock. Read how to use it in your operator's manual. The electrical distribution box containing fuses and relays is positioned to the left, behind the operator's seat. Care and maintenance of your machine is very important. We'll now show you what you as the operator must do both before and after your work shift. Thorough and regular maintenance is a good way to avoid unnecessary downtime, and a well-maintained machine also helps prevent injuries. In all operation of your machine, make sure you follow the safety instructions. Wear the right kind of clothes and personal protective equipment. As the operator, you must also read the instructions in the operator's manual in order to reduce the risk of accidents. Be safety conscious and use common sense. An operator has to meet the expectations, requirements, and demands of many people. They vary from one country to the next and from one operating site to another. Be aware of the local and national regulations that apply to your particular operating site and country. Before you begin your shift, inspect your machine. Procedures before starting. This is to make sure your machine is in good condition before you begin your workday. Remember, before you carry out any service work on the machine, it must be parked in the service position. You can read more about this in the operator's manual. Make sure there are no leaks, loose bolts, or unions. Check the condition of the tires. Insufficient air pressure affects the stability of the machine. Tire wear will be greater, resulting in shorter service life. Make sure you don't stand by the side of the tire when inflating. A tire fitted on a split rim can explode, causing injury. You can check the hydraulic oil level while standing on the ground by looking at the level pipe. The coolant level is also checked from the ground. It's important that the attachment is lowered to the ground when checking. The level must be between the max and min markings. When topping up, use Volvo Original antifreeze mixture. Suitable mixtures are described in the operator's manual. Check the engine oil level. If you need to fill oil, maintain the greatest possible cleanliness. Do not overfill and use the same oil type that is already in the engine. The level must be between the max and min markings on the dipstick. The operator's manual tells you which oil to use. Turn on the battery disconnect switch. At the same time, check that the lights and lenses are not cracked or broken and that they're clean. Also make sure that all rear view mirrors and windows are clean. Then you'll have very good all-round visibility from your operator's seat. Never forget to fasten your seatbelt. Wear the seatbelt whenever you operate your machine. Before you start the engine, make sure that the gear selector is in neutral and the parking brake applied. Don't race the engine when you start it. Let it run at low idle for a few minutes to lubricate the turbocharger and allow the required pressure to build up in respective systems. Meanwhile, you can check the function of all gauges, controls and instruments, and that all warning lights have been extinguished. In cold weather conditions, use preheating. You can read more about this in the operator's manual in the section on starting cold engine. Before driving off, release the parking brake, raise the attachment to the carrying position and engage a directional gear. We'll now give you the basic skills required to operate in the most common applications. If you have a new machine, operate it with care during the first 50 hours. Read the operator's manual to find out what applies during the run-in operation. Wear your seatbelt whenever you're operating the machine. If you select a gear when the parking brake is applied, the central warning light will flash and the buzzer will sound. The electrically operated parking brake can't be released until there's sufficient pressure in the brake system. Volvo's wheel loaders have automatic gear shifting and are very easy to operate. When shifting between forward and reverse at low speed, there's no need to stop the movement of the directional selector in the neutral position. When you need additional power, press the kickdown button to engage the first gear. First gear will be engaged if the travel speed is below 10 km an hour, that is 6 miles an hour. A short beep signal confirms the gear shift. APS-2 lets you modify the gear shifting program according to the type of work and operating conditions. APS-2 monitors both engine speed and ground speed, which guarantees that the machine always operates in the most efficient gear. This means greatest possible production and low fuel consumption. The mode selector has 5 different operating settings, 4 automatic and 1 manual. You'll have automatic function in 2nd, 3rd and 4th gear. The machine moves off in 2nd gear and shifts up to the selected gear. The 1st gear is obtainable through the kickdown function. If you're operating in position A, the automatic position, the machine always starts off in 2nd gear and automatically shifts from 2nd up to top gear. The 2 light positions provide a smoother shifting at lower engine speed. They are suitable for load and carry operations, timber handling, and light and heavier transporting operations. At full throttle, the gear shifting will be the same as in the heavy mode. The normal mode and the heavy mode are used when you want to shift gear at higher RPM than in both light positions. In the man mode, you select the required gear with the gear selector. However, the safety functions of the automatic control are maintained. When operating downhill, you can press the downshift switch and there will be an automatic downshift in 1 or 2 stages depending on the traveling speed and provided you have not depressed the accelerator. It'll result in a strong engine retarding effect which reduces the wear on the brakes. The gear selector must never be moved to neutral when operating downhill. If you keep the switch pressed in, there'll be no shifting even if you increase engine speed. When operating uphill, you can use the function to block any gear shifting to avoid unwanted down or up shifting that could cause the wheels to slip. When approaching very steep inclines, you should preferably shift down at an early stage not to lose momentum. Correct use of the downshifting function increases the service life of the brakes and reduces the oil temperature in the axles. If the amber warning lamp lights and a text indicates that the temperature in the axles is increasing, operate more slowly and the axle temperature will drop. When braking in a hard heap or bank, you should use kickdown to get first gear and the highest possible traction power. Before we start to work with the machine, check that the bucket positioner is correctly adjusted. A correctly adjusted bucket with its bucket floor angle contributes to minimal wear, since the bucket rests on the wear plates. When the bucket cuts in at the correct angle, it's easier to penetrate the material, which also reduces tire wear. Park the machine on level ground and slightly raise the bucket off the ground. Activate the switch for the bucket positioner and tilt the bucket forward. Move the tilt lever to the rear detent position for rearward tilt and release the lever. The bucket will now stop in the predetermined position. Lower the bucket and check that it is at the correct angle to the ground. If the bucket stops in this position, no adjustment of the bucket positioner is necessary. If the bucket is positioned incorrectly, adjust to the correct angle as follows. Stop the engine and make sure that the ignition key is in the operating position. The adjustment is performed on the tilt cylinder. Loosen the nut and push this bracket to its forward position. Activate the switch for the bucket positioner and move the tilt lever to the rear detent position. Now adjust the bracket forward and lock the nut when the light-emitting diode is turned off. At the same time, the tilt lever returns to the neutral position. The adjustment of the bucket positioner is now complete. In certain applications, it may be advantageous to use a predetermined height for the lift arms. This adjustment is performed in a similar way to that of the bucket positioner. We'll now show you bucket handling of loose material. While operating, make sure that no one is within the work area of your machine. A few meters away from the gravel bank, lower the bucket and press the kickdown button to downshift to first gear. With the bucket positioner activated, the bucket will now be positioned at the correct angle. Penetrate the material at the same time as you increase engine speed. Tilt and raise the bucket with small alternate movements so that an even pressure is exerted on the front axle while filling the bucket. Incorrect handling may cause the wheels to slip, which results in poor bucket filling and increased tire wear. As the loader operator, you decide where the transport vehicle should be positioned. Show the driver of the transport where you want the vehicle by stopping your machine with the bucket raised over the position where you want to dump the load. Sound the horn when the transport vehicle is in the correct position. For maximum penetration, move into the material with a straight machine. This applies to all bucket handling and also in timber handling. When you dump the first load of the loading cycle, lower the bucket as much as possible and empty the bucket slowly to avoid shock loading, thus reducing impact on the transport vehicle and its driver. For short working cycles, we recommend the gear selector control set to position 2 and the mode selector in either of the light positions. If your machine is equipped with the boom suspension system, use the gear-dependent position. After having dumped the last bucket, flatten the load and signal to the driver of the transport that loading has been completed. We've now shown the basic operating technique for working with loose materials. Tips: before you start to operate, level off your work area. This will improve both operator comfort and productivity. For best performance and capacity, strive for the shortest possible work cycle between the stockpile and the transport vehicle. When working with hard materials like blasted rock, a different technique is required. For this tough job, we recommend a rock bucket and rock tires designed for it. This applies if you're working continually with rock loading. Here it's particularly important to have a well-planned work site. A sharp stone in the side of the tire may easily become expensive. Therefore, do not drive up into the material. You have to plan your operation. Allow the bucket to find its way in between and under the stones. Avoid bending with one corner of the bucket. Work calmly and methodically, and above all, think about not letting the wheels slip. Suitable gear selected position is 2, with the mode selector in light position 1 or 2. If you have boom suspension system, select the gear-dependent position. Never enter the rocks at speed. Instead, angle the bucket a few degrees forward and carefully work your way into the material. If a stone gets wedged, change the approach angle. As a rule, avoid using the same tracks twice. Use the kickdown as you enter the excavated material, and remember that if engine speed is too high, the wheels can slip. The large windows give a good view of your working area, even with the bucket in top position. When the load is full, first check to see that none of the stones can fall off, then give a signal to the operator in the transporting vehicle. Tips. The first bucket load to be dumped in the transporting vehicle should preferably be of finer material, which will then cushion the impact of the heavier stones. If you dump sand or finer material on the ground, it'll be easier to level the working area. It's of utmost importance that you use the correct bucket. Using too large a bucket, for example, may make the machine feel weak and unstable. Production will also be reduced. With the correct bucket, where the relationship between the weight of the material and the recommended tipping load for the machine is right, productivity increases. In the operator's manual under the heading Bucket Operation General, you can read more about the selection of a correct bucket. Make a habit of shaking the bucket with the tilt function to remove excess material from the fully loaded bucket. This stops material from falling out of the bucket. During load and carry operations, tilt back the bucket completely, approximately 60 to 70 centimeters, that's 2 to 2.1 feet above ground. If your machine is equipped with the boom suspension system, you must raise the bucket enough so that the tilt link does not rest against the mechanical stop to allow for the suspension movement of the boom. With the boom suspension system engaged, you get a smoother ride and reduce vibrations in your machine. It protects your health, increases comfort and well-being, and makes you more efficient. The function will be automatically disengaged when changing down to first gear and automatically engaged again when the transmission shifts up to second gear. The gear selector in position 4 and the mode selector in position light 1 or 2. The boom suspension system should be set for gear-dependent operation. Check to make sure the transport road is even and free from any larger rocks. Always put safety first during load carry and transport operations. An overfilled bucket will easily spill material. Read more in the operator's manual in the section on transporting load. Tips. When operating up a ramp, it's important to make proper use of the load sensing hydraulics on L70, L220 and L330. Raise the bucket slowly. This provides more rim pull and you'll also save fuel. With the hydraulic attachment bracket, you can easily change from one attachment to another. You control it all from the cab. Before hooking on the attachment, you must retract the locking pins in the attachment bracket. This is done in 2 steps with the switches on this panel. The switches are equipped with a catch to prevent accidental unlocking of the attachment. First, activate this switch and then keep this switch pressed down. Tilt forward slightly and lower the lift arms. Align the upper attachment points. Lift and tilt rearward. Now lock the attachment using the switches in this order. As a safety measure, tilt forward and press the attachment against the ground to check that it's locked. If the front wheels begin to rise, the attachment is properly locked. Make sure that the boom suspension system is disengaged when checking. A timber grapple with a third hydraulic function is released as follows. Close the clamping arm, stop the machine, move the gear selected to neutral and apply the parking brake. Stop the engine and then depressurize the hoses by moving the control lever for the third hydraulic function back and forth a few times. Now disconnect the hoses from the machine. Never strike a quick coupling when you're connecting or disconnecting an attachment. Connect the hoses to the correct position on the attachment so that they're well protected from any dirt and physical damage. Remember to fit the protective caps for the hydraulic connection. Tips: choose a shaded place for the attachment, since the oil pressure in the hoses will be increased when warmed up, making it more difficult to reconnect the attachment. When transporting timber, the best position for the gear selector is position 4 and the mode selector in position light 1 or 2. Boom suspension in speed-dependent mode is the right choice. The machine will operate in a smooth and stable manner. When loading and unloading, the boom suspension system must be deactivated. In all work with timber, it's important to proceed with great care so that the logs are not damaged. The large clearance radius, in combination with limited visibility, will also increase the risk of causing damage if you're not careful. When placing logs on the sorting table, begin the lifting movement in good time so that you don't have to slow down to reach the correct lifting height. Lower the logs by carefully opening the grapple and tilting slightly forward. Carefully reverse away. You open and close the clamping arm with the control lever for the third and fourth hydraulic function. When approaching the timber, the clamping arm must be completely open. The fork tines should be parallel to the ground when you penetrate the stack. Slowly reverse the machine as you alternately tilt and close the clamping arm. With higher stacks, enter at the upper part. Normally, you don't use the kick-down function in log handling, as the machine will then be too powerful and the logs may be damaged. To unload timber from a vehicle, open the clamping arm and tilt the grapple forward. Look for a way in between the logs and carefully close the clamping arm at the same time as you tilt rearward. Repeat by alternately closing the clamp and at the same time tilting the grapple rearwards as you slowly move forward to compensate for the rearward tilting. This will help you avoid damaging expensive timber. When filling the grapple, be careful not to damage the vehicle's stakes. When you pick up the remaining timber logs, take extra care not to damage the vehicle. If you're not used to timber handling and have not yet got the feeling for the positioning of the clamping arm, ask a signalman for help. When you're adding logs to a stack, position the grapple against the stack and carefully open the clamping arm. Tilt the grapple completely forward so that the logs roll out in a controlled way. Reverse away carefully at the same time as you lower the grapple. The basic idea is that the logs should leave the grapple without a vertical drop. Tips: make sure that the logs are in good order when you leave the stack to help later work. To make adjustments to the surface, make sure you have some material left in the bucket. It'll automatically fill in any rough spots in front of the machine. When planing, strive to operate the machine as horizontally as possible. The bucket should be level against the ground. This gives you a smooth and level surface, a good starting point for further planing work. When using a pallet fork attachment, it's suitable to operate with the gear selector in position A and the mode selector in position light 1 or 2. The boom suspension system should be in speed-dependent mode. Keep the load against the heels of the pallet forks. If your machine has long fork tines that protrude past the pallet, change the position of the fork tines by using this technique. In this way, you prevent damaging the sides of the transport vehicle. Always lift the pallet when you move it across the transport vehicle. If you push the pallet, you risk damaging the goods and the pallet. You may even damage the vehicle. Keep the load low, approximately 30 to 40 centimeters, that's 1 to 1.2 feet, above the ground to achieve a stable carry position and optimal visibility. The load should only be carried up high in loading, unloading, or stacking applications. Make a habit of always approaching with the machine steered straight when loading and unloading. You'll have the best visibility on both sides of the pallet and good stability when handling a heavy load. When handling large goods on pallets, always reverse your machine away from the loading position. You can't see what's behind the pallet goods from the operator's seat. When backing up the machine, keep the load low and make sure you have good visibility to the rear of the machine. When you transport attachments or materials in the bucket, make sure that it's adequately secured. The boom suspension system activated in speed-dependent mode. Additional information that you should also be aware of when transporting is included in the operator's manual. Also, follow the regulations in your particular country. We'll now change attachments to the material handling arm. Only the material handling arm approved by Volvo may be used with the machine. Check to make sure that the attachment is locked correctly and that the pins in the boom are safely secured. Thoroughly read the section about the material handling arm in the operator's manual. Respect the rules that apply to the load tolerances indicated on the attachment. In order to stop the load swinging back and forth, control the machine and material handling arm smoothly. Do not operate the machine at speeds above 6 kilometers an hour, that's 4 miles an hour. We recommend the gear selector in position A and the mode selector in position light 1 or 2. The boom suspension system deactivated for the best possible precision. A small movement down by the attachment bracket will result in a greater movement at the end of the material handling arm. Be extra careful where and how you position your machine. The ground surface must be even and there must be no risk of the machine sinking. Keep safety foremost in your mind when using attachments close to other people. It's not capacity but personal safety that's most important in your work. Cooperation between the operator and his fellow workers is of great importance for good. If you're going to operate the machine on a public road with material handling arm, push in the attachment as much as possible. Don't forget to lock it with the lock pins before you drive off. A tip. If the load starts to swing, stop the machine smoothly and, if needed, lower the load to the ground. For this application, we've equipped the machine with a snowplow. It has good snow clearing ability and is maneuverable and powerful. The large rounded windshield provides excellent visibility over the snowplow and its edges, so that you can clear snow very close to cars and other obstacles. In extreme conditions, you can increase safety, efficiency and productivity by fitting snow chains. Make a habit of always activating the switch for single acting lift function. If the machine is equipped with the boom suspension system, it should be activated and set to the speed-dependent position. This is especially important when operating at high speeds on uneven surfaces. This prevents the snowplow from striking the ground, which would result in violent and uncontrolled movements. It's very important that you wear the seatbelt. When loading snow, use the same technique as in loading loose materials. Be sure to check there's no person in the working area before you start the operation. It's important that you work so that an even pressure is exerted on the front axle while filling the bucket. Incorrect handling may cause the wheels to slip. We've now gone through the basic techniques for operating in the most common applications with Volvo attachments. In our attachment catalogues, you'll find descriptions of a great range of attachments for use with our machines. When your shift is over, it's time for procedures after operating. Clean the area around the fuel cap before removing it. Always top up with fuel to prevent condensation from forming in the fuel tank. When the machine is parked, the attachment should rest on the ground. The gear selector control should be in neutral and the parking brake applied. Before turning off the engine, let it run at low idle for a few minutes to lower the temperature and to safeguard lubrication of the turbocharger. Every 250 hours, you should check the transmission oil level. This is preferably done at the end of your shift when the oil is still warm. The engine should run at low idle. The level should be between min and max on the dipstick. The L90D has a separate dipstick for the drop box. If the machine is not parked on level ground, block the wheels. The lubrication chart can be found in the operator's manual and here on the machine. Maintain the greatest possible cleanliness. Clean the grease nipples before using the grease gun. The boom should normally be lubricated every 100 hours, the lower bucket pins every 50 hours. If you operate in a dirty environment, you should grease the lower bucket pins every day. Make sure that the grease gets through to both sides of the bearing pin. If your machine is equipped with the automatic lubrication system, check the lubricant level here. If you're working in dirty and dusty surroundings, you should grease the rear axle joints every day. Excluded from this greasing are the L70 and L220, since they're lubricated by the rear axle oil. If you operate the machine in a dirty environment, wash the machine after your shift. Your work will be made easier. You'll also feel more satisfied to work in a clean and well-maintained machine instead of in a dirty and poorly maintained machine. Lock the door and walk around the machine to make sure that everything is as it should be. Finally, turn off the electric power with the battery disconnect switch. We'll now show you how to best maintain and care for your machine in addition to the daily maintenance. We've chosen to show points that are suitable for you as the operator. Other repairs and service must be performed by an authorized dealer workshop. The oils you use and at what intervals oils and filters should be changed, as well as how you perform certain other adjustments, are included in the operator's manual. Always make sure that the machine is thoroughly cleaned before starting any maintenance work. Carefully read through the safety instructions and the rules in the operator's manual. That information is of great importance for the correct handling and maintenance of your machine. Start by parking the machine in the service position. Never stand or walk under raised lift arms without first securing the boom. No service or maintenance performed by the operator requires the lift arms to be raised. And remember, when you walk on the machine, step and stand only on areas intended for this and that are provided with anti-slip surfaces. After the first day of operation, it's important to tighten the wheel nuts. This goes for new machines and after a change of wheel. It's also important that if you've mounted chains on the wheels. Every 250 hours, the fan belt tension should be checked. The belts for the alternator and the AC compressor are not self-adjusting. Every 250 hours, the engine oil and filter should also be changed. Change every 500 hours if you use special oil and fuel with low sulfur content. The drain hose is underneath and inside the frame on the right side. Remember to be extra careful when working with hot oils. Fill oil in the oil filter before installing. Also, apply oil to the seal. Tighten the filter by hand until the gasket just touches the sealing surface, then tighten another half turn by hand. Start the engine and check that there are no leaks around the sealing surface. The conditions which apply for the 250-hour intervals to be valid are described in the operator's manual. If any of these conditions is not fulfilled, or if the machine operates in an acidic or very dusty environment, the engine oil should be changed every 125 hours. The water trap is normally checked every 100 hours, in certain conditions more often. Drain any sludge and condensation water. If the fuel system for any reason needs to be bled, read the operator's manual in the section on air bleeding fuel system for further instructions. The fuel filter should be changed every 1,000 hours by an authorized dealer workshop. Every 1,000 hours, or when the text clogged air filter appears on the display unit, the air cleaner primary filter should be changed or cleaned. Contact your workshop for instructions on how to clean the filter. After the filter has been cleaned 5 times, it should be changed. The secondary filter should be changed every 2,000 hours. Never remove the filter unless it is to be changed. When you've installed the filter, check to make sure that the seal around the cover is intact. And remember, never start the engine for any reason without a filter or with a damaged filter. If your machine is equipped with an oil bath cleaner, check the oil every day. You should change the oil when it's become viscous or if there are sludge deposits on the underside of the steel mesh filter. At the same time, clean the bowl and the steel mesh with diesel oil. If you need to top up the coolant, use only Volvo original antifreeze or anti-corrosion additives. Suitable mixtures are described in the operator's manual. Change coolant every 2,000 hours. If the machine is equipped with a coolant filter, you need only change coolant every 3,000 hours. The coolant filter is changed every 1,000 hours. Do not fill to the maximum marking since the coolant expands when heated. Check to make sure that the radiator is not clogged and that hoses and connections are intact. This also applies to the condenser for the air conditioning and to the working hydraulics oil cooler. If needed, clean these components with compressed air or water jet. The batteries should be checked every 100 hours. Check that the cable terminals and the battery terminal studs are clean and securely tightened. If needed, top up with distilled water. The transmission oil filter should be changed every 1,000 hours, and the transmission oil should be changed every 2,000 hours. The suction strainer in the bottom of the transmission should be cleaned at the same time as you change the transmission oil. The breather filter for the transmission is changed every 2,000 hours. Fill transmission oil here. Be sure to use the right quality of oil. See the section on recommended lubricants in the operator's manual. The oil in the front and rear axles should be checked every 250 hours and should be changed every 1,000 hours. If the machine is equipped with external axle oil cooling, the oil should be changed every 2,000 hours and the filters every 1,000 hours. The oil level should be up to the edge of the hole or at a maximum 5 mm, that's 3/16 of an inch, below the hole. The axle oil is drained at the center of the axle and by the hub reductions. Change the 2 breather filters for the axles every 2,000 hours. The boom should be lubricated every 100 hours and the lower bucket pins every 50 hours. If the machine operates in harsh conditions, this should be done every day. The upper bearing of the frame joint should be lubricated every 100 hours and the lower bearing every 1,000 hours. The 4 grease nipples on the steering cylinders should be greased every 100 hours. The front and rear propeller shafts should be greased every 500 hours. The rear axle bearing should be lubricated every day. Don't forget to lubricate the hinges on the door, window and engine covers. The pre-filter for the cab should be changed every 1,000 hours. Between filter changes, clean as needed. The cab ventilation filter should be changed every 2,000 hours. The clogging of the filter entirely depends on the operating environment and should be checked once a week. The best way to clean the filter is to shake it carefully. Do not use compressed air, vacuum cleaning or water. The air conditioning should be checked every 100 hours. Read the operator's manual to find out what should be done. The hydraulic system oil level should be checked daily. The level pipe is clearly visible from the ground. The tank is common to the working hydraulics, brake system and steering system. The filler plug for the hydraulic system is under the cover. This is also the position of the return oil filter. It should be changed every 2,000 hours. The oil should be changed every 2,000 hours if the system is filled with engine oil. If the system is filled with hydraulic oil, it's sufficient to change the oil every 4,000 hours. Read the operator's manual for instructions on how to do this. The breather filter for the hydraulic oil tank is not cleaned. It's changed every 2,000 hours. Sludge and condensation water should be drained every 500 hours. If your machine is cared for and maintained, as we've now shown you, there's little risk of problems or unplanned downtime in the time up to the next service interval. Don't forget to restore the machine to operating condition after it's been parked in the service position before you drive off. We wish you all the best in your daily work.